Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Clinique podcast. I am Christelle, and this podcast is a space where astrology, the nervous system, and lived experience come together, especially for sensitive, intuitive, non-linear minds navigating relationships in a world that often misunderstands them. I don't know if that's a good enough introduction, but I hope along the way as you listen and as you grow with me, you get to really understand what I do. maybe I'm saying that because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But anyways, I wanted to talk about when I mentioned last week that I wanted to talk about the election that I chose to launch my podcast. But I think I'm going to change my mind and actually explore love, safety, and the nervous system just in honor of Valentine's Day. Not to make this gimmicky at all, just because it's the kind of energy that we're entering. So I'm going to go with that, but I will share the election at some point in the near future, so bear with me. And it's just my mutability as well. I like to go with the flow of things. So I just got this idea and I'm going to go ahead with this particular topic at hand. But before we begin, let's just take a moment to arrive. You don't need to analyze what you're hearing. You don't need to agree or disagree. Just notice your body as you listen to this episode. And if you want, you can let your shoulders drop a little bit. Just relax your shoulders or take one slow, deep breath. And there's nothing more than that you need to do during this time together. Okay, so today, like I said, I want to talk about love, but not in a way love is usually spoken about. Not in a romantic way, not as compatibility checklist, not as something to optimize or to perfect. I want to talk about love as a nervous system experience. Because for the kind of minds I'm speaking to here, which are, as you know, sensitive, intuitive, and deeply perceptive minds, love is rarely just emotional. It's physiological. It's something the body recognizes long before the mind makes sense of it. Now, before I go further, I want to briefly locate myself so you understand the lenses I'm speaking from. My background sits at the intersection of trauma-informed practice, psychology, and astrology. Astrology and transpersonal psychology have been part of my professional and very personal portfolio for years, alongside work supporting people whose nervous systems have lived under long-term stress. So I am trained as a trauma-informed practitioner, which means I work with an understanding of how experiences, especially relational ones, live in the body and not just in memory. So neuroscience is something I'm continually learning and integrating as I go. I'm definitely not an expert, but I'm learning, integrating, and I'm genuinely loving the process of bridging scholarly research, information with lived embodied experience, especially where it overlaps with astrology. And that's my actual passion in life, to merge the science and what might be deemed as, pseudoscience, which is essentially real astrology, together. So, because when you bring these disciplines together, something really important happens. People stop asking, what's wrong with me? They are the issue. Instead, they start pondering and querying around what happened to my nervous system and how do I work with it now? That's the kind of question that people are starting to ask. And so that shift is especially important when we talk about love. And astrologically, love is often reduced to Venus. Venus is essentially the planet of love. But Venus doesn't exist in isolation. Love also lives in the moon, our emotional body, our emotional memory, in the fourth house, our sense of, that house is about our sense of safety and our sense of belonging. In the seventh house, which is essentially how we bond and how we attach. And very often, particularly for sensitive people, in Neptune, where boundaries soften and empathy runs very deep. So if you have strong water placements, Neptune aspects, and a prominent moon or strong Pisces energy, love tends to be immersive. You don't just like someone, for the sake of liking someone. You actually feel into them. You attune, you sense shifts in tone, energy, and mood. And sometimes even before words are spoken. That's how sensitive you are. And this just shows just how highly responsive your nervous system is. So from a neuroscience perspective, what we often classify as chemistry or spark is actually the nervous system responding to familiarity. And this is where things can get confusing, especially for people who feel very deeply. The nervous system doesn't look for what's healthy. It looks for what's known, for what's familiar. So if early bonding experiences involved emotional inconsistency, unpredictability, intensity, or having to stay highly alert, the body can register those states as love later in life. Isn't that interesting? And I could so see that in my own life, where growing up as a child being essentially, I wouldn't say there was a lot of display of love and affection growing up. And now I will eventually go into like my early years and blend that into the astrology and how that's impacted my life in neuroscience, from a neuroscience perspective. But definitely I could see how the kind of coldness and harshness of my everyday lived experience at home displays itself in my adult life, and how that's reflected in my astrology blueprint as well. So our body registers those states as love, not because they feel good, but because they feel familiar. All of that intensity, all of that inconsistency feels familiar, right? So this is why so many sensitive people find themselves deeply attached to relationships that are exhausting, confusing, or destabilizing. Oh my goodness, this has been me my whole life in relationships. Again, I'll go into that another time, but it's just very interesting to be able to share what love can look like in this context, And I have to say, it's not because you're bad at love, right? I have to reinforce that. It's not because you're bad at love. It's because your nervous system learned to associate connection with activation. In trauma-informed psychology, we understand that attachment patterns form before language, before logic, before conscious choice, which means you can know a relationship isn't right and still feel pulled towards it. Because insight happens in the thinking brain. Attachment lives lower. It lives in the body. And this is also why talking things through doesn't always fix the love, the situation. It doesn't always, repair things in relationships, because you can understand a relationship perfectly. You can name the patterns, the issues, you can articulate everything, but you can still feel dysregulated in it. And you can still feel dysregulated in it. And for sensitive minds, healing in love doesn't happen through better reasoning. It actually happens through felt safety. Learning what calm connection feels like. Letting the nervous system experience consistency without intensity. Allowing love to be steady rather than all-consuming. And this is where astrology becomes genuinely supportive rather than predictive. Astrology essentially helps us understand how we attach, what our nervous system prioritizes, where we tend to merge and where we tend to brace ourselves. And neuroscience helps us understand why those patterns exist and how they can soften over time. And together, they offer compassion instead of self-blame. One personal reflection I'll share here gently is that I've had to learn that what feels electric isn't always what's nourishing. And like I said, my early childhood was actually very cold and detached. But it also came with some very, I don't know how to say this without placing blame or sounding like I'm placing blame, but there was definitely a lot of like feelings of fear, of shame, you know, growing up. And I guess that made me very, very sensitive to attracting that similar type of feeling in my adult relationships. So as someone with a sensitive, perceptive nervous system, intensity used to feel like connection. And calm used to feel unfamiliar, because for me, calm was never a thing that existed necessarily when I was younger. It was more the intensity. And so my nervous system associated that as familiar. And it took time and safety to realize that peace doesn't mean absence of love. It often means absence of threat. So as we move through February, there's a collective invitation to notice these themes without rushing to act. This isn't a month that demands decisions in love. It's actually a month that supports awareness. You might notice who your body relaxes around, who you feel more yourself around, where you brace, where you soften yourself. You don't need to label anything. You don't need to change anything. Just noticing is enough. There's no pressure, just noticing. And over the coming episodes, I'll continue exploring love, attachment, astrology, and the nervous system, always with the intention of helping you to understand yourself more kindly. And not to tell you who to love and not to tell you what to do, but to help you listen to your own nervous system with more clarity. Yes, I hope this all made sense. It's just touching on the topic of the nervous system relative to love and how we experience love and how our foundational years has a big impact on how we experience love in adulthood. And I want to end with a gentle question. Not want to answer immediately, just want to sit with and reflect upon. So what changes when you stop asking whether something feels intense and start asking whether it feels safe? What changes within your mind, within your thinking, within your body, within your space? And just know there's no right response. Just notice what your body does with that question, and we'll continue from there. Thank you so much for being here. If you've got any questions, any suggestions for any future topics, please do let me know. In the meantime, this is Cosmic Clinique and I'm Christelle, and make sure you take care of yourself, your astrology, and your nervous system. Take care.